How can we spread kindness in all that we do? That's what we're going to talk about today. One of my favorite topics, and I'm thrilled about who I get to talk about it with. Welcome to Women Leaders on the Move, a Her C-Suite radio podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Benamou, and every week I learn right along with you from inspirational speakers, guests, and thought leaders. My guest today is Claude Silver. I had the incredible opportunity to meet Claude in person here in Chicago, and I knew right away that it would be so valuable to you to hear her story and find out about her new book. Claude Silver is the world's first chief heart officer at VaynerX, and she believes that showing up with heart and humanity is the key to unlocking greatness in people. We talk all about this in our conversation. I know you are going to feel so uplifted by her approach, and I hope you'll adopt some of the things that we talk about today in your life. Let's get started with this conversation now. Claude, I am so excited to welcome you to Women Leaders on the Move. I can't wait for this conversation. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. We did it. We made it happen.
We did. And, I'm so glad that I got to meet you here in Chicago. It was such a joy to spend some time with you. Shout out to our friend, Michelle Peacock, who brought us together. But for our listeners who don't know any of that, let's talk about a snapshot because your life is so interesting. Of course, I read your book, but for our listeners, a snapshot bringing us to this moment today.
This moment. Okay, well, it's a great moment because today is my 12-year anniversary at VaynerX, where I work with Gary Vaynerchuk. So 12 years is the longest I've been anywhere, that is for sure. It's a big deal for me. Prior to that, I had been at jobs for like 2 years, 2.5 years, and then jumped around. So I love what I do. I absolutely find so much joy in spending time with people and really being with them on their journey. And today is really kind of a moment in time where I'm looking back and saying, God, 12 years ago, wow, the average age was 23 of this company.
I can remember 12 years ago because, of course, following the company, reading Gary's books and all the things. And as time has progressed and you started, there was 400 people. And now are you over 2,500?
Yeah.
That's a tremendous increase. What was that like, the growth? I mean, that's a lot.
That's a lot and not a lot of time. And in places where, we don't speak the language. I don't speak the language. And so I would say working with Gary is incredible because it is nonstop. It's not hustle, definitely not hustle, but there's so much momentum and there's always something to do and a place to go to get to that, it's never, first and foremost, there's never a same day. There are always different days. But the growth was really fun. We had to experience a lot of different things, understanding what work and life was like in Europe, how different Asia is, what Australia is like, and then, hiring the right people without being there and, without touching the culture. Are they, is everyone still getting the feeling that I hope that they get every single day? So I would say the growth has been, now looking back on it, the growth took the time it needed to. There are things we would do differently today. If we had to open up the London office again, we would do it differently, for example. But these are great learns, and I wouldn't consider any of them failures. They were just the experiences that we've learned from, which is the whole point of life, right? To experience life, learn, take something, enjoy it, and continue to press on.
Well, one of the things that I think is so inspirational about the work that you're doing is that you really meet people where they are, understand what is going on, which is so unique because oftentimes we're just so busy. And in an agency, especially, I come from an agency background and I know it's like hectic and you're always going. And then you don't pause and take, kind of look around and take a pulse check and things like that. But you really do. What is that like? And that's part of how you wrote your book about how people show up and being intentional about being in tune with what people are doing. So, what is that like for you and the people around you?
My hope is that the people around me feel very seen and that they have a place here in the company. It's funny, today I've had 2 meetings with brand new employees, and then I've had many meetings with people that have been here for years and years. And toggling between those conversations is really fascinating because for the new employees, I'm, sharing with them like really our connective tissue is everything. So get to know people and get involved. And when there's a dinner, try to get there. And when there's a basketball game, try to get there, right? Try to take part. And then for the OGs, it's really like so many of them now have families. And it's like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm getting home at whatever o'clock and putting my kids to bed, or I'm going to the soccer game. So, meeting people where they are, I think is an absolute gift and a real honor. In order to meet people where they are, they have to invite me in. I'm never going to push my way in. So whether or not it's a actual invitation or it's an energetic invitation, I will show up consistently. I will show up the same person every single conversation.
Well, one of our mutual friends in our little friend group that we have, Jackie Joy, talks about our energy arrives before we do. And I feel like that's for you, always being consistent, showing up, you're sending that positive energy. What was it like writing your book? Because you just had an amazing book come out. Congratulations. I'm so excited. What was it like writing that from this lens?
The book, I had fits and starts with it. I fought with myself along the way of like, do I have anything new to say? And, my own imposter and limiting beliefs. So once I could actually settle those down, which did take some time, I really enjoyed the research of it all, if you think about it. I know what I do on a daily basis, and I'm pretty confident in what I offer. But then to be able to translate that on a page so that anyone can understand was a massive process. But that's kind of like the research. Really, I lived in the book. I lived every single word of that book. And I don't know if I've ever done anything like that, or I can't remember a time where I've really spent so much time digging in the dirt and excavating and, coming up with like, oh, yeah, that's exactly what that is. When I say this, it actually is that framework. So it was really magical. It was magical and it was extremely time consuming.
How long did it take you?
Once I finally put away all those demons, it took like about 3+ years.
You can feel it because it's so well thought out and your stories. I love the story about your grandmother. It's so sweet. And we share a favorite quote. Like one of my favorite all-time quotes is Maya Angelou. So when I read it, I was like, oh, of course we love that quote together. But some of those life lessons, I think they're so heartfelt to people to understand, like that's the fabric that makes us how we show up authentically. And we carry that with us. And sometimes we diminish that. In the book, you talk about being your authentic self, but sometimes people feel, and especially if they're the first and the only, which isn't the case at your company, but people do have that experience outside of your company, knowing that they can be authentic. What advice would you give to that listener who's listening in?
What I would say is when you make a choice to not show up as yourself, or you make a choice consciously or unconsciously to shrink, you really, really are not letting people get to know the wonderful parts of you, and vice versa. You close yourself off to what opportunities can come your way, what relationships can be built. And so, what I say is dip your toe in the water. This isn't to jump in and, make a big splash and let every olive Claude out. Like no one wants olive Claude out. I contain myself. I have to regulate myself. But, start to share certain things about yourself, about your experience, about your process, whether or not it's at work or it's in life. You will find that there are other people just waiting for that door to be opened, that actually need you to take the lead. That's where I really say leaders are come from every place. They're not top down. It's from bottoms, sides, wherever. we're all leaders. And so I have that one chapter, which is, you're the CEO of you.
You also talk about leadership mojo. Yeah. So what is that for you? How does that show up for you?
My leadership mojo is always going to be of joyful service. It is literally, how can I create space for this person and hold that space while I'm with this person in a way that will always have some kind of service oriented, like I'm here to serve, and I'm very proud of that. But I will always have some level of possibility within that. That doesn't mean toxic positivity. That doesn't mean optimism where there isn't really any, but I will always have let's look at it this way, or can we reframe it this way, or it is what it is, and we're going to be okay with that today. So again, going back to meeting people where they are is so crucial, I think, for any of us, and especially if we are in any kind of leadership position.
And as you grew the company and as you continue to grow and you work with leaders, is there any story that stood out where someone might have experienced a transformation moment, right? Where they might have not been authentic, or they were kind of, but they weren't sure. And then they came into themselves. And then I know you've got plenty in the book, but is there one that you'd like to share that really stands out to you? That was, oh, that was so beautiful that happened for them.
A conversation I had today, as a matter of fact, with someone who I think for a long time he was thinking he had to be a different person in order to succeed and put on a different hat and hustle. And that hustle culture, I talk about it in the book, this fake urgency, this hustle culture it's doing such a detriment to us. And this person decided to take almost 3 months off. We held their role, and they've come back much more balanced, much more joyful, I would say their energy is actually much cleaner, if that is such a thing. And I said to them, well, how's it going? And they said, I want to have fun. And I just thought, what a massive transformation from where they were, which was kind of like there was almost like a dark shadow on them. I would imagine they were acting out of their integrity, and now it feels like they're much more in their body.
Being able to have that time and space. So often we don't take the time to really to slow down. We have been in this hustle culture. And I'll even say, Gary, I've read his books. I was, Crush It, Jab,
Yeah,
Jab,
oh yeah.
those books. And I was like, you're right. I'm going to and I did. I did. I mean, it wasn't like he was telling me to do it and I was doing it. It was like, oh yeah, someone that's doing what I'm doing, I get it. Right. But as time goes on, when we get quiet and we really can appreciate, maybe slowing down is actually the answer. And it can be scary. People get afraid to slow down. What have you seen for yourself or for others around you when they're like, I need to slow down, or you should slow down?
I do think people are afraid that they will be forgotten. Any value that they provided will be erased. That just doesn't happen. That's not real. That's fictitious. The value that you brought will always be the value that you brought. Whomever you are, I believe for the most part, you've moved us further down the field. And taking time to reset and taking time to, whatever it is, go visit your family, go plant some trees. It doesn't matter to me, but whatever brings you home is very important to not forget that you do have the right, you have the birthright to go home anytime you need to. And when I mean home, I mean back into your center. And that in itself can be very scary for people too, because they might not know their center, or they might not like who they are when they're still. And so that's a wonderful, again, opportunity for them to be curious about that. That's the reframe I would have there, which is like, well, let's just be curious about what that little you is saying in there. Like, that little you needs something from big you. So let's pay attention to that. I've taken 3.5 months off once from a job and did nothing. And it was phenomenal. I did it in doing nothing. I did everything.
I can just visualize that moment of like, you know what, I need that break. And then taking the break because we don't give ourselves sometimes that grace to do that. I'm thinking about the time frame. So your daughters are younger, they're growing up. And so you were writing this while they were really young. What are some of the lessons that you learned writing this that you hope that they'll remember or know about as they get older?
I talk a lot about kindness with them. I really, really do. And how we want to share kindness. And so one of the things I've done with them since they were little is we've made these kindness balloons just with our hands, a kindness balloon. And we'll throw it out the window when we're driving, or if we're in an airport, I'll say, and maybe someone is in a wheelchair or something else, let's just throw some kindness that way. So, I want them to know that they contain kindness, and kindness is for us to share, and it doesn't take anything away from us. That's a big, big thing, I would say. And the other thing is, inside of the book, there's a lot of empathy inside of that book, and thinking about how your actions and words can really affect someone. And you can be the sun, shine on them, or you can be a rain cloud. And so, by the way, that sounds so basic, but I would say we all need to remind ourselves of that. You can be a radiator or a drain, is what I would say to an adult. And to them, it's like you can be the sunshine or you can be a rain cloud. Isn't it nice to be the sunshine? Doesn't it make you feel good?
Kindness, and it's one of my favorite things to think about, is it's free. People just underestimate
Yeah.
just doing the smallest thing, opening a door or smiling, waving, the tiniest gesture. You have no idea what that other person might be experiencing this day. And they just say, "Oh, that was really nice. I don't know that person, but that was just a nice gesture." And it's free. We have abundance of free kindness. And so often people are like restricting and like, we shouldn't. It's like, why? Why wouldn't you want to give that out into the world?
I'm with you. And then there's people that operate from a scarcity model. And then if I give it
Mm.
away, there's not enough for me. And you and I come from an abundance mindset, which is there's plenty and there's plenty more after that. That's never going to dry up that well. Will never dry up.
Hey, it's Natalie. I wanted to pop in and invite you to find out more about how we spread kindness inside her C suite. We are a thriving network for women in the second half of our careers, and we are living and acting kind every day. In fact, it's my number one rule. You have to be kind. Check out hercsuite.com today. As you think about leadership teams and as things grow and growing rapidly, these types of things might get off to the side because you're really focused on the thing at hand. What advice do you give a leader who really wants to surface that back, but feels the pressure of, I've got all these balls in the air that I have to keep track of, and I might forget, that one little note of kindness or what have you?
That's a great question because I actually think it's quite harmful to forget something like that. I think it could be quite harmful to a person to be running so fast with so many plates in the air and to forget the kindness, forget to be compassionate, because that tells me they're not being kind or compassionate to themselves. And that, I think, is where things can really collapse. When we are not able to give yourself a pat on the back or look at yourself in the mirror and say, you know what, that was a good day, or I did my best today. That kind of grace we have to be able to extend to ourselves in order to extend to other people. So while you're running around, like a chicken with their head cut off, which we've all done, try to keep a reservoir, just a little reservoir for yourself, which you can also share with other people. That's what I would say. It's a non-negotiable for me.
If we take a time capsule, we already talked about your daughters, which I love how beautiful it is, your kindness and sharing kindness and spreading kindness. If we take a time capsule and we look into the future, looking back at this moment of your book and your launching and all the things, what would be the thing that you would just think that was the best? I mean, we're talking on the 12th anniversary, so already amazing. I'm so excited that this is happening today. But if you're looking back, I don't know, 5, 10 years from now, it could be 100 years in the future where we're not even here. What would that look like for you?
I think it's actually kindness. I desperately want to continue to create a revolution of tenderness. That to me would be a phenomenal way to go out with a generosity of spirit and a generosity of heart. Again, it doesn't cost me anything. I don't have to switch it on or off. There are other things I have to switch on or off that don't come as naturally to me. But it does really come down to leaving people better than you found them, better than you found them.
Oh, so good. Claude, I could talk to you all day. I know you've got a day packed, and I'm so glad that we had the chance to meet today and spend time. I can't wait for our listeners to read your book. If they want to find out about you, what's the best place for them to go?
You can find me on LinkedIn all the time for sure. And then go to my website, claudesilver.com. I'd love to talk to anyone that writes me. I'm here. I'm also pretty active on Substack now, but please reach out. I respond to everyone that writes. I want to know about what's going on in your life and maybe we can jam.
I love it. Thank you so much for doing this today. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thanks, Natalie. You're the best.
Thank you for spending your time with us today. I loved this conversation with Claude because I had the opportunity to meet her and then to read her book and hear how she framed it and thought about it. It is an incredible read. I hope you will check it all out in the show notes. Reach out to her. And if you have questions, reach out to me. I would love to hear from you. What about kindness resonates with you? As we think about this year and the importance of kindness, I really hope that you'll make it a priority for you to be kind and appreciate that you matter. Keep shining your light bright. The world needs you.